Hello, everyone. We're back again with another video. Got Tillman Goins joining me again today. Let me get that right. Tillman Goins, uh, former state representative out of the state of Tennessee and former Hamilton County Commissioner. Um, so he's joined us today. We're going to talk about the bureaucratic state in the state of Tennessee. And before we get started into our conversation, I asked you if you're following me on Facebook. It's Midnight Rider. Follow the page, click follow, and share the information. Same thing on YouTube and Rumble. You can find me there at Charles Cook 52. My videos will be on there, and you can share and watch other videos that we have uploaded there, and share them with your friends and stuff. I think this is good information. This is why I do it. I want to share this information to the people in Tennessee to let them know how things are done, what's going on, and what you have to deal with to try to make positive changes in the state of Tennessee. So with that being said, my good friend Tillman Goins is here, and we're going to talk about the bureaucratic state in Tennessee. Um, if you're going to try to get anything changed here that deals at the state level, it's going to be somehow tied to a state department. And when those changes are going to be made, or somebody goes about trying to make those changes, they're going to get a lot of pushback. So anyway, Tillman, go ahead and start us off and tell us some of the things that you've seen in Nashville as far as dealing with making changes.
Sure, thanks, and I appreciate it. And of course, it's always a pleasure to come on and speak with you and your viewers. And I hope they actually learn something or get something from this. They're always able to, of course, if there's something they feel that was unspoken, reach out to me directly. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. They want some follow-ups, or even through you. That way, the next time you have me on, maybe we can revisit some of these things. But yeah, my time in Nashville. Which I enjoyed, by the way, was 3 terms in the House for 6 years. And a lot of folks would come up to me and say, well, there ought to be a law for this, and there ought to be a law for that, and there ought to be a law. Great. And we talked about how an idea would become a bill that would become a law. But the job of representative was so much more than that, too. And a lot of it was helping constituents navigate the bureaucracy in Nashville. State government, well, government in general over the years has grown larger and larger and larger as people expect. There are certain things people expect government to do, and government should do those things well. If we feel that paving roads is one of those jobs of government, then we're willing to pay taxes for that service, and we expect them to do a good job at that service. Of course, state government is much larger than local governments. They also deal with roads, but they also deal with things such as there's a Tennessee State Department of Health, there's a Tennessee State Department of Veteran Services, there's a Tennessee State Department of Roads, there's a Tennessee State Department of, you name it, and it's there. Agriculture is big in Tennessee.
And while you're naming all this and talking about it, let me share the screen and show the viewers the list of departments. And this doesn't, I don't think this covers it all, but this is the department directory in Nashville for the state. So go ahead.
Sure. And so, yeah, these are things, children's services. These are all things, and these are all that folks believe their state government should be doing as it pertains to our everyday lives. And so when you've got like a Council on Development Disabilities, a lot of people feel that the role of our state government is to try to help with that. And so there's a department for that. There's an entire system of folks. Many of these that you see rolling across here have somebody who's in charge that was appointed by the governor to represent him and his views on each of these. Finance and administration, for example, is a big one. Environment and conservation is another big one. All of these areas that you see here, general services, has a group of folks whose job it is to focus on that area of government and to become experts in their role in that area of government. And so they all have different roles, very different roles. Human services, you could imagine, would be very different than what they do over at TDOT. Tennessee Department of Transportation. And as they've grown and as people's expectations of what government should be doing for them have grown, it's gotten big. And there is no elected representative that can be expected to know everything there is in 2, 3, 4 terms about each of these departments. You really have to do a lot of studying and a lot of learning. And that's why they do have a liaison system set up so that you can help navigate those needs that you would need the most. And by the way, and that goes back to, I think, what we were saying a couple of videos ago about why I'm against legislative term limits, because each of those folks, when they come in and sit down with a new legislator, you have to expect that the person that's in charge of Department of Human Services is going to tell you what you need to know if you've got a constituent issue dealing with Department of Human Services, or if you've got a TennCare issue that you need to address. They're going to very much sit there and try to protect what they've been charged with TennCare. They're going to try to protect their not only just their livelihood, but what they feel their purpose is within state government. And so that sometimes means it's not in the best interest of the legislator who has specific questions. It sometimes means it may not even be in the best interest of constituents. And that's not to say that they're always, trying to be evil or underhanded or undermined. They have a different perspective because they've been entrenched in that world for 10, 15, 20 years. And once it's become their life mission, nobody likes to see change. No one likes to see their department or what they've worked for their entire lives just turned over on its head because someone else came along with a different idea or a different way to do things. And some of that's human nature. So in Tennessee, we spoke about this in a previous video too, those departments can be very helpful. When somebody comes to me and says, hey, we've got this issue on this state road or this or that, I can sit down with TDOT and say, hey, why the exit 8 exchange, I think is what we talked about. Why is there a moratorium on building your pavement on the Hamlin County side of that new bridge at exit 8 or that rebuilt bridge at exit 8? You're done, you're not working there. Why can't we lift that moratorium on building so this private enterprise can start building now that the construction's done? Very helpful. They'll move things out of your way, and that's great. But then there are times where when you are bringing forth an initiative for your constituents that they don't agree with, they don't want to change the way they've been doing things in Tennessee. And so they're going to fight with everything they can to try to stop the legislative process from happening or to stop that bill from actually going through. And they've got a lot of tools in their toolkit, as you can imagine, too.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you one example of where that can happen. And I can't pinpoint the year. It was probably around 2016 or 2017. Hunting and fishing licenses, I think specifically fishing licenses, which they went up in this state. And they went up by about 30%. And they did so right after the legislative session ended as well. So they go up by 30%. And there is a checks and a balance on some of these fees, but it's not very efficient. And so that's a big jump. Now, what they would argue is, well, it's just $6 and it hasn't gone up in a long time, or it's just $7. But for whatever reason, many, many years ago, the state of Tennessee gave many of these boards and these entities authority to set their own fees and their own rates. Not every state does that. Nevada is one. In my research, I found that not a single fee can go up without it being voted on by the legislature. Right. And that is the way I think it should be as well. When money comes out of the private sector and goes into government's hands without that direct input from the entire legislative process, then something is awry, and that bureaucratic state can kind of get away with things. And that's not to say that's what was happening here with the rise in the fishing licenses, but it happens, and it can happen, and that's just not so when I get calls as the elected representative from a bunch of fishermen saying, hey, why the big jump in my fishing license fee this year? I better have an answer for them.
And
And
you,
there's no worse feeling than not having an answer for them.
right. And chances are, being busy with other things, you didn't even realize that the fee had went up. So you
No,
got,
and they don't want us to, because they don't want us asking questions beforehand anyways, right? It's always easier to do it and then just face it later. So I brought a bill. I brought a bill that says, look, none of these administrative fees can go up unless it is voted on by the legislature. Immediately, I got pushback, not where you think it would be from those people who like to control and set their own fees, and to be able to do so, in a rapid manner. But from some legislators. But these fees, inflation, these fees have to go up. They have to, and we don't want to be on record voting for it every time. They'll see it as a tax increase. So you see a lot of folks who like to march around and walk around saying, look, I'm for low taxes, I'm for this, I'm for that. They are okay with your fees going up as long as they're not the ones on record voting for it. And that turned out to be one of my biggest obstacles. But so what I did was I set forth a bill. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I understand how inflation works. I understand that if you're not growing the number of fishermen in the state, but the costs, I mean, look, state employees, I mean, you've got rangers out there who will go and check fishing licenses. You've got folks that are taking care of the lakes. There's a cost to doing these roles. So I said, okay, I brought a bill that said, here's the compromise. You cannot raise your fee. If you have the authority to raise the fee without going through the legislative process, you cannot outpace inflation. If you're raising fees at a rate higher than inflation, then what you're doing is you're growing the size of your department.
right.
You're shifting money out of the private sector into the government sector more than anybody would expect it to, and more than it needs to. So if for whatever reason you're outpacing inflation, then you're growing greater than the economy, and that's not a good thing. Because what that means is it shifts from private sector to public goods, right? And so, and of course, every objection you can think of, that's what they try to throw at you. And they said, well, but we hadn't gone up in however many years the fishing license fee hadn't gone up. And I said, well, that's fine. You can recapture those years. If it had been 10 years since it's gone up, and if inflation has been reported at 2% a year, then do the 20%. But you can't outpace inflation. Like, you could go back and recapture, but you can't outpace inflation. And they said, well, but you don't understand, but our fees are the cost of doing thing has grown. Gas for our vehicles has grown greater than inflation. Okay, then make the case to the legislature, make the case to those people who are elected to represent the 6.5 million Tennesseans. Now it's closer to 7 million Tennesseans, but at the time, 6.5 million Tennesseans. Make the case to us. And if you can make a strong case to me, I'll vote for the fee increase. But it gives me the opportunity to explain to the citizens why that had to happen.
Right.
Did you have to grow the number of employees you have in your department in order to do this? Did you, were they deserving of pay raises? And if they'd been a number of years without pay raises, was that the reason or is there new equipment that has to come out? If you're stocking lakes at a greater rate than you used to because there are more fishermen, I want to be able to explain my vote of why I raised the fee. Otherwise, you have to do a spouse. Well, that wasn't enough. There was an attack. They saw it as an attack on every department that has specific fees that they can set. And so every department swarmed down on those committees and those committee chairmen that they work with on a regular basis. I mean, you can imagine, for example, there's a transportation committee. So you can imagine the people from the Department of Transportation become real cozy with the chairman and the members of the transportation committee. They become friends. It's easier to influence folks that you think like you, or that they think you like them. And so they've got those trusted people in their ear saying, oh, well, this is bad for government because of this. This is bad for government because of that. And they love to throw all these what ifs and why they can't do something. And so ultimately, of course, the bill didn't pass, but that was because the entire team, not just people over fishing licenses, but people over roads, people over any department, you name it, went and lobbied that committee really, really hard against this bill because they wanted to be able to set their own fees, inflation aside or anything aside. And they do this as if it would be the end of the world. It's always the end of the world scenarios, right? But this is how Tennessee operates. And this is what, when you point at other states that are doing it the way I propose and doing it successfully, I would love to look at them and say, you mean they can figure this out in Nevada, but you can't?
Right.
Why is their department operated better than ours? And of course, they don't like that kind of talk, but it's true. If they can do it in other states, surely Tennessee can figure it out. I mean, I think California is another one that actually had limits on that. They had to go through the legislative session. See, he agrees.
The wind's blowing up here, so he's seeing things blow around. So anyway,
Yeah, is that Fred?
That's Fred. Yeah, the cover blew off my grill, and he's looking out at the back window and seeing it blow around. So then he went to the front door and decided to bark. So anyway, but that's what a dog's for, is to let you know something's going on.
Right.
So basically, and we hear about this a lot in Washington. We don't look at it. People really don't pay attention at the state level as much. Some people do. Political nerds, as I said in a previous video, like myself and other people, but it even happens at the local level, the city and county level. You still get these same things. And basically, what these departments are, especially a lot of these department heads and stuff, they're nothing more. And it's another video that I want to talk about lobbyists, but they have a lot of lobbying power at the state legislature, and they walk in and talk to these legislators and put a lot of pressure on them to keep things the way they are used to having them. And as I've said before in the other video, they see themselves, and it's absolutely a proven fact, they're there when the legislators are gone. And when they're retired or died or whatever, they're still there and they're still working. And they figure, well, we can outlast him or her or whatever. And so that's how they do things.
Right. And in many cases you do. So then if you can imagine, so the state government committee was where this particular one about the fees went through. If you can imagine, the committee is comprised of half the members of it are new. And then you've got all these people from government saying, but we can't operate if this bill passes. Everything's going to fall apart.
Right.
Well, you tend to believe Chicken Little's story, right? I mean, the sky is falling. Well, then we can't do this. And who is this representative up here? He's just a flamethrower. He's just trying to whatever. No, I'm trying to find a better, more efficient way to do things for the public, for my constituents, for everybody's constituents. But that's how they're going to frame it. And so, yeah, they're going to outlast you. And the new ones are a lot more susceptible to seeing it because they haven't seen the opposite yet, right? They haven't been there long enough to see the administration working against their bill.
Right. Yep. So, and so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video is so people could get an idea of just how hard it really is to reduce the size of government, to do things to make a positive effect for the people. And it's easy to go down there and do these things that explode the size of government, because if you're going to do something that's going to increase a department's budget by $3 or $4 million a year, they're not going to fight you on that.
No.
But if it's just to keep it from growing as fast as they want it to be, you're going to really get the pushback on that. So that's why I wanted to show that. He's having a rough time with the grill cover out here. So anyway, but so I think it's good information, especially the story that you had about the fishing license stories. And I remember you telling me about that. And it's hard to believe that you get that much pushback on something trying to protect the uh, people's money. And but that's the way it is.
And the nature of government is Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman said, it's people spending other people's money on other people,
Right.
right? So there, you've got folks that well-intentioned, they may be in some cases, in most cases, they're not as efficient as they can be. And so when you want to check on that efficiency, and you say, hey, just keep it within inflation, pal, seemed fairly reasonable to me. Because again, inflation is a measurement of the growth of the economy, is the amount of money in the economy, rising prices. If prices are rising and if the cost to operate government is rising faster than the cost to operate a Walmart, then something's askew, right? And so you've got to have that extra set of eyes on it. But no, they don't. They, for whatever reason, didn't like that bill and was able to convince other legislators that they knew what was best for the people.
Right. Okay. Good information. I think we're running right at 20 minutes now, so we'll try to end this and cut it off. I think it's good. I would tell the people, hey, go to the state government website, and I think it's tennessee.gov, and just scroll through there and look at the size of that, and imagine going to the state legislator before you write a bill and before you send your legislator or ask somebody to take a bill to the state and say, hey, well, let's try to get this done. You need to do your homework and say, okay, what are we going up against? Ask your legislator what he's going up against to try to get something like this done. That way you can plan your bill better. You agree?
Absolutely. And when it's going up against government, it's a lot of folks, it's a lot of people, and everybody, every representative has government workers living in their district too, right? So it's not always easy when they'll have the local, this hasn't happened to me specifically, if it's Department of Children's Services and you have a bill that's going up, they'll have their local DCS agents contact you and say, hey, why are you trying to do this to us?
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've been there and seen government departments show up in force in a committee room when you're trying to change something.
Right.
Some of them are very visible, more visible than other ones. Let's just put it that way.
And they do that at the local level too.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, they do. Yes. So, all right, we'll end this as I've said at the beginning. Please, if you're watching this on Facebook, you can follow me on Facebook at Midnight Rider. Follow that page, or you can find me on YouTube at Charles Cook 52 or Rumble Charles Cook 52. Share this information, share it with people that you know. It's good information, and it will help educate the population of things that's going on at the local and state level. Again, thank you, Tillman, and we'll catch you again in another video, because we want to do another one on lobbyists, and it is going to be good. So anyway, have a good day, and we'll see you again.